Hi, this is Alan McKay. Welcome to episode 109. I'm speaking with Philip Trott, one of the leading immigration lawyers in the UK. Let's dive in.
Welcome to the Alan McKay Podcast. Alan is an Emmy Award-winning visual effects artist and mentor to many leading industry experts. Listen in as Alan talks with other industry leaders in film, video games, and visual effects about their experience, lessons, and methodology. Alan will teach you pivotal advice to fast-track your career, better your skills, and reach your ultimate dream job. Check out the latest episodes on alanmckay.com.
All right, so welcome to a brand new episode. I'm really excited about this one. As you probably might have noticed, I've been kind of going around the world bit by bit, interviewing all of these different countries. So far we've covered New Zealand, Canada, the United States, and I wanted to also cover the UK. Obviously, London has a very big film industry and also video game industry, design, TV, you name it. And I thought it'd be really interesting to kind of cover the ins and outs of what you need to know to be able to work and live and even apply for citizenship, all of these different things for the UK. So this, I think, is going to be a really fun episode, and I'm hoping that you get a lot from it. At the same time, if there is a specific area that you would like to know more about, I started out initially just interviewing Amanda Gillespie for the United States because I thought that would be a really interesting one to kind of learn the ins and outs about how to work in the United States. And that was episode 52, so alanmckay.com/52 if you want to check that out. And then I proceeded to go and do more of those episodes because I've gotten so much feedback around it. And definitely if there are certain countries or certain areas that you are interested in, obviously Europe will be a big one that I'd like to talk more about how to get the blue card and all the other work permits that you can get. And yeah, I'd love to kind of fill in the blanks. So if it is something that you would like to know more about, let me know where you're interested in finding more about, and I will go and I'll track down the best of the best to do an episode with. So for instance, I've just recently done an episode with Wedder's immigration firm, who handle all of their employees and everything else. So that one is going to be coming up pretty soon. For a second, I thought I might have already done it, but I haven't published it yet. But yeah, so there's lots of stuff coming up. And yeah, that being said, if you're not aware, I've got some brand new training coming out next week. And I'd hoped it would be out this week, but unfortunately it's going to be Tuesday, the 12th of December. I'm going to be releasing a brand new free training course. And if you want to check it out, that will be available on Tuesday the 12th. However, you can sign up for it now. And that way, the minute it comes out, you'll gain instant access to it. So if you want to do that, simply go to www.alanmckay.com/decay. So DECAY. And this is going to be really cool because I'm incorporating a lot of different stuff into it. And as you probably know, I try and put out about 20 or 30 hours of free training, high-end free training every single year. And typically that means that rather than just trying to do short little things about like, check out what this thing does, I want to really show you and emulate what we do in a real production, because it's better to actually do what we do in film than to just show off a little feature here and there. So I definitely try and really incorporate a lot into these. This was shot on the Red Epic W with the helium sensor. It was shot over in Portland. I'm actually shooting with talent in this, so it's a actual character-driven live-action visual effects sequence that we're doing. And I'm actually using the head technical director for Nike, who, basically is one of the key 3D people for Nike worldwide. We get to melt his face off. So I think it'll be a lot of fun. Yeah, there's lots going on. And that training is going to be really cool. Obviously, we're in the middle of doing the boot camp at the moment, and I'm hoping you're enjoying that. I'm really interested to see how this goes. Like I said, it's a lot of work. You'll get access to 10 videos for that, as well as all the episodes, a lot of written information, as well as guides, tutorials, lots of stuff. And that's all in the bootcamp. If you want to check that out, it'll be in the show notes. And at the same time, the free training I'm putting out is another 10 hours of high-end visual effects training. So there's a lot, no matter what you're really seeking at the moment, there's lots and lots of stuff coming out. So I'm really excited about this, and I'm hoping you are too. Now, all of this stuff I'm going to leave links to in the show notes, so that way you can easily sign up for the bootcamp if you haven't already. In addition to that, you can also sign up for the new visual effects training that I'm putting out in December as well. That's free. And also I'm going to be opening up registration for the live action series mid-December. So this will be for 2018. So this will be your one and only chance to sign up for next year. I'm really excited about that too. I'm excited about everything right now. But as you can probably tell from the tone of my voice, I'm running around my head cut off trying to get all of this going. And at the same time, the bootcamp, for instance, means that we're doing 3 episodes a week instead of 1 for the podcast, and theming them together. I really love that idea. Whether it's something we continue to do, I want to do this on a trial basis, see whether or not it's something that you find valuable. I hope it is. I'm pretty confident it is because I put a lot of work into it. All of my team did. And at the same time, I need to see whether or not I have the bandwidth on top of all the stuff that I'm doing to be able to consistently keep this up. I do see it, though, as a stepping stone that if we were to do 3 episodes a week, I don't see it being far off that ends up being 5 episodes where every single day there'll be content and interviews and other stuff coming out. So again, like if that's something that you find valuable, let me know. Again, in the show notes, you can email me. There'll be a link in there. And just give me some feedback or leave a comment. But I think that all of this is going to be really valuable. And I love the idea of theming subjects so that way we can all kind of get in it together. So I think this is going to be really cool. At the same time, right now, as I'm putting this episode out, it's December and not long left in the remainder of the year. So this is a chance for you to really make the next year count. So that bootcamp is specifically about making it the best year yet. And this doesn't mean like if you're listening to this now being, who knows, 2020, 2050, who knows, that doesn't mean that this isn't relevant anymore. This is something that you can definitely, and I've designed it this way, jump on right away. If you were to say tomorrow, I want to start my best year yet, that's exactly how it's designed, is to set you up to really kind of crush it. So there's so much cool stuff coming up. I've been working on a brand new website. This has been a long journey, but with the new website is going to be coming so much cool stuff. So I'm really excited about this because I think that it's going to be a chance for me to start to really build up a site of just loads and loads of content, from Houdini tutorials, Maya tutorials, Max tutorials, career-related material, really in-depth and on-point content, whether it's written guides or video tutorials, live video, and so many other resources, tools, calculators. There's a lot going into this, and I'm really excited, but it's something that's not far off. I'm hoping by the end of the month that will go live as well. So lots of stuff going on. And speaking of which, I've got to get back to it because we've got some big deadlines coming up. So that being said, this episode I'm really psyched about is with Philip Trott. Let's dive in. If you don't mind, do you want to give us the quick introduction to who you are and the type of work that your firm does?
Yes, my name is Philip Trott, and I'm the partner in charge of the immigration department at Bates, Wells and Braithwaite. We are a full-service law firm with a niche department dealing with immigration work and arts and media work. So we would draft commercial contracts for people who want to work in the arts and the entertainment. We draft material for employers who wanted to engage with staff. And we do all linked tax advice, which flowed from the entertainment or arts engagement. Does that help?
Yeah, absolutely. So just to start out, I figured, and we talked about this a minute ago, but I figured it'd be really great to get just like a bit of a bird's eye view on what the typical process is for working in the UK. So let's just say that someone starting out wanted to look at getting work over there. What would usually be the process to go from initially looking for work to actually acquiring a visa? Who they need to contact, what typically would they need to expect?
Well, I think the first thing to remember is that not all work, in inverted commas, actually needs a visa. We have a very flexible system when it comes to people in the arts and entertainment sector getting permission to work in this country. So, for example, there's a category of entrant called visitors, and the immigration rules caters for visitors from the arts, entertainment or music sectors, and they can come to the UK to give performances, take part in competitions, make personal appearances, and take part in promotional activities or cultural events or festivals. Now, all they need at that point is a letter of invitation and evidence when they walk through the border that they're coming to do what they have been invited to do. So I would be inclined to take the letter of invitation with that person, take a resume with them, and if there's some form of promotional material about what they're coming to do, take that with them. So they can just literally walk through, they can say, I'm coming here to do X, and it may well be a competition or an audition or a personal appearance on a film, or appear at a festival. So typically, you may have seen I've done some work for lots of your country's rappers, Snoop Dogg, Busta Rhymes, and the like. Typically, those individuals would come in and say, here's evidence of the fact that I'm performing tomorrow night. And there would be probably a commercial agreement between the UK entity and the American entity by whom they are engaged. And they would be admitted for the period of the engagement. So typically, a visitor can be admitted for 1 day or up to 6 months. Because if you're an entertainer or if you're a performer of some other description, you may well just say, I'm coming for a day and I'm going home. The visitor rules are then subdivided into other sectors. So film crew, actors, producers, directors, technicians, provided they're employed by an overseas company, they can come to the UK to take part in the location shoot or program that is produced and financed overseas. So the key to this is having an employer or business which engages you overseas. And the idea behind engagement overseas is that you, the producer, director, want continuity in relation to the artists. So that person, again, can come in as a visitor. And typically, when you've got a series going, and the series is part filmed in any country overseas and part filmed in the UK, that would be how they come in. And the person would probably have a contract with the film company overseas to come and continue to perform in the UK. As I said to begin with, if you're a visa national, you need a visa before you come, which is a process whereby the individual applies to the British consulate in New York, and within 15 working days, they would have a visa, provided they presented the appropriate paperwork. Now, there is a way of curtailing the 15 working days down to 5 working days. Basically, you're paying more money for an expedited visa application.
Cool.
On top of that, the film crew can be accompanied by their personal technical staff. And I've had situations where personal technical staff has been linked to security individuals, so minders, hairdressers, someone to look after their children, so the nannies, anyone to give the performing artist a sense of personal worth and well-being. There we are. That's a nice neutral way to say it. But the security staff is a typical one. The hairdresser is typical. The nanny is typical.
Yeah.
And again, the personal technical staff can stay up to 6 months. The concept of work in the UK is a very refined one. As a visitor, you can't work here, but if you're coming into the creative sector, even though you are working here, it's not defined as work, provided you fall within the visitor rules. But they must they can't be paid by a UK company, apart from a situation which I'll come to in a minute, which is called permitted paid engagement, PPE for short. Most important thing, if you're not coming in under PPE, is that you're engaged overseas. So that's the visitor, nice and straightforward, up to 6 months, and evidence to show you've been engaged overseas and are being paid overseas. The permitted paid engagement route is as good, but you've got to have, the individual can only stay for up to a month.
Right.
Typically, it helps artists, entertainers, musicians, provided they've been invited by a UK entity and they can be paid here. So that's that. Mm-hmm. If you want to stay for a longer period and be paid in the UK, there's something called a Tier 5 creative and sporting. I mean, it's a funny collection of words around Tier 5, but they're all within the same group. So if you paint or you kick a football around. Yeah, exactly, exactly. Yes, I mean it's absolutely right. It's a category which was created for short-term working individuals, and there is a test, and you've got to make a unique contribution to the UK labour market, but being internationally renowned is probably all that's needed, and proof of that typically would be a portfolio of evidence which would show that you're famous. So you might have had Kevin Spacey coming in under that category. You might have had someone putting on a stage show as a producer or director. That person would be coming in with a contract and with something called a certificate of sponsorship, COS for short. Now, a certificate of sponsorship is it will be in a paper document, but it has an electronic number attached to it. And as the individual comes up to immigration control, and the only time in which you can just come up to immigration control if you're a non-visa national coming for up to 3 months, comes up to immigration control, shows the COS and shows the contract, and that person will be admitted for 3 months. However, that's not the end of it, because you might want to come for more than 3 months, and you might be a visa national. So if you're coming for more than 3 months and you're a visa national, you've got to get a visa before you arrive. And typically, the employer in the COS will promise to maintain the worker being the artist. The maintenance would be the employer promises to support the worker if the worker doesn't get the job after arrival. So if the film company goes out of business, the employer who promised to maintain the worker has to do it for 1 month post-entry. Wow. If the employer is not going to do 1 month post-entry maintenance, then the worker must show he or she has £945 in savings and has held it for a continuous period of 3 months. Mm-hmm. That is it in the sportive and creative Tier 5 sector. If you're if you anticipate wanting to stay in the UK for a long time, so, for example, putting on a show which has got an anticipated run of more than 12 months, and you think you might want to stay permanently eventually, there's another immigration category called Tier 2. And that, again, is one which is available for employers who wish to sponsor a worker, and the worker has to be maintained, and the certificate of sponsorship must be valid for 5 years. So it could be valid for 5 years, and then it leads to permanent residence. But the key here is it has to be a higher level of skill than the Tier 5 creative and sporting, and they must get a visa before they come. Mm-hmm. So if you're only coming for 3 months, then fine, use Tier 5. If you want to come for a longer period and longer than 12 months, then go for Tier 2. The 12-month Tier 5 visa can be extended, but it doesn't lead to permanent residence, whereas the Tier 2 does lead to permanent residence. Now, these are all categories where there is either an overseas employer or a UK invitor or a UK employer, that's tier 5 and tier 2. If the artist is at the top of their game, so this could be, for example, I did one recently for a West Side Story director wanting to use his past acquired skills to ply his trade generally in the United Kingdom. There is another immigration category called Tier 1 Exceptional Talent. I mean, it says what it is written on the tin. You've got to be exceptional talent. And you may think, well, how on earth can you prove that? Well, our immigration service don't pretend to know what exceptional talent is, or a second category is exceptional promise. What they do is they go to an organisation called the Arts Council England, and you give them evidence of what your talent is. And if they are convinced that you're of exceptional talent, and I give the West Side Story director as an example, you get what is called an endorsement. And the endorsement then is given to the visa officer, and the visa officer automatically grants the artist a visa. Now, I say automatically because, as you know, some of the people I've acted for have got very colourful pasts, and one of your colourful pasts could be a criminal conviction. And we have a very complex range of immigration rules which could bar you from entry to the United Kingdom for a year, 5 years, or 10 years, and in certain circumstances indefinitely. So the message to all artists is to take advice. And I'm not looking for work, but I've got plenty of artists who don't take advice, and they turn up at the border and they say, "Hi, I'm here to do a gig," and they're back on the same plane on the same day because they've got a criminal conviction which is going to effectively lock them out from the United Kingdom. Exceptional promise, exceptional talent, you get 5 years and then you get permanent residence. And the final category, which would be of interest to your listeners, would be Commonwealth citizens with a UK-born parent or grandparent. And you might say, well, what's a Commonwealth citizen? Well, it's a citizen from our old Commonwealth. Now, you might think that America is part of our old Commonwealth. I'm afraid that's not part of the old Commonwealth.
If you don't have the Queen on the back of your coin, then you're not qualified, basically.
Say that again.
I said if you don't have the Queen on the back of your coins, then
yeah, exactly. Got it in one. So the old Commonwealth is Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and a few countries out in the north of South America, which are still part of the Commonwealth. And there's a published list of what countries are, which can be accessed at any time. But the most popular ones would be Australia and New Zealand.
Yeah.
And if you've got a UK-born parent or grandparent, you're home and dry. You get a 5-year permit, and you can eventually get permanent residence. Does that help?
Yeah, no, all this is really great. It definitely sheds a lot of light on all of the process. And I feel like for most of my audience is either in film or video games, especially working in visual effects, that sort of thing. So usually it's a longer term contract. And so I would assume a lot of times people ideally want to go for a tier 1 if they can get it, because essentially that's the equivalent of let's say an O1 in the US, which I know we talked about. Yeah,
I'm familiar.
And so typically, let's say with that one, what would be the turnaround time for initially applying for one to actually receiving it? How long does it usually take?
If your listener is going to be an exceptional talent or an exceptional promise person, typically the Arts Council England take about 4 weeks to process it. But the key for the artist is gathering together the information to support his or her application. So if you are exceptional talent, you might expect the person to have got a BAFTA or a nomination or a Golden Globe. You might expect it. And in those circumstances, that is virtually a no-brainer. If you're an exceptional promise person, you've got to get evidence to show that you are indeed someone of exceptional promise. And you're on the way up and even though you've not got a BAFTA or a Golden Globe, you've had a nomination, but you haven't got one.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that's really cool. And that's usually it's with building the case, like other things you can do, such as like let's say that someone was looking to work down the line in UK and they wanted to start building a good case for themselves. Besides getting awards, are there other things such as getting interviews or printed media, such as having a book written or contributions to magazines, anything like that is going to help build their case?
That would certainly help, but it's not the only thing.
Right.
And there are a well-publicized list of potential pieces of evidence on the UKVI, that's our Department of Homeland Security website, which lists all the evidence which you might wish to pray in aid to get a permit. But the key to it is getting the evidence in the right form. So, for example, you're required to get a letter in support from someone in the industry who's well known. You can't get a letter in support saying he or she is a jolly fine person, and I'm sure they'll come on well in the future. What you've got to do is to say how they're a jolly fine person. Like, for example, I saw them performing. They are 1 year out of acting school. They've already received a number of lead roles in off-Broadway events, and I would employ them in the UK in a similar event in the UK. So this is high quality recommendation in addition to nominations. So it's hard to say the following will do until you have the client in front of you saying, okay, this is what I've got or this is what I can get. So in those situations, I would say you've got to look for an employer in the UK or an employer in America who's prepared to sponsor you, send you to the UK.
Right. Okay. Because that actually helps answer a few questions. Because one of the big questions was for me, can you apply for these yourself, or typically would it be better to seek out employment beforehand rather than trying to worry about the visa up front?
Well, the most important thing to remember is that you can do it all yourself, and that can be good and bad. If you're particularly articulate, well educated, and you're good at putting paperwork together, then I would say great job. Or alternatively, if you want to make sure that something's going to push all the right buttons, then I'd say get someone to help you. There's nothing worse than turning up at the border. For example, I want to come in as a visitor, or I want to come in as a tier 5 person, and you've got nothing in terms of evidence. So it would be just like if I was going to the United States, I would expect to go with a collection of documents in support of my request for entry to the US. Same goes to the UK.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I mean, it's the same way for me and my taxes. If you're running a big business, then you can do it all yourself. But if you hire a professional who knows the laws and knows the loopholes, then they're going to be able to protect you in ways that you never even think about. So I always think that it's better to hire a professional and pay the cost to do that. But in terms of like actually, let's say you go in the UK though and you wanted to work, would it be better to apply for work ahead of time, or would it be better to get the visa and then start looking for work? In other words, is it like with the US, typically you've got to have an employer or at least a sponsor before you can ever set foot to work in the US, let's say?
Well, you do. Again, it comes back to the category of entrant. If you're a visitor, you're going to have a US employer sending you to the UK. If you're coming for permitted paid engagement, so-called PPE, you're going to have an invitation from someone in the UK. Please come to the UK. We will pay you. You can stay a month.
Right.
If not, it's going to be a tier 1 exceptional promise or exceptional talent, or tier 2 or tier 5 coming for what so-called sponsored work. So I think we've got to. So with the tier 1, let's say, because I think a lot of the time, and obviously not everyone is an exceptional talent, but I'd say if anything, that's probably one that most people probably aim for, being people that have been working 10 years in the industry, have got a lot of experience. Would they typically need to apply for a work permit through their employer? This is an individual who probably doesn't have an employer. This is an individual who, use my example of a person is going to be being a director in the UK, that person wants to be free to sell their services around the UK theatre industry.
Right.
So that person's looking for the freedom to work as a result of their past history.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can freelance and do all that with that.
Yes, exactly.
That's great.
Exactly.
That's really awesome. And just a couple of follow-ups. So like with the UK VI, is there any examples of material that is really effective that people, just off the top of your head, that people should kind of focus on providing? And obviously I'll check out that link and try and provide content from that page as well.
Right. I mean, if we're talking about tier 1, then we are looking at press reviews. We're looking at letters of recommendation. We're looking at awards. We are looking at situations where people say, were you to come to the UK, I would employ you.
Mm-hmm.
So we can send you the link, by the way, to the UK VI Tier 1 exceptional talent and exceptional promise.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you. That'd be awesome.
So that will give a list of best quality evidence.
Cool. And in regards to getting letters of reference, do they specifically need to be from UK companies, or can it be worldwide? If they were,
it could be worldwide.
Okay, great.
It could be worldwide. So I'm just thinking about my West Side Story person. We had something from Andrew Lloyd Webber.
Mm-hmm.
We had press releases from all his international productions all over the world. So that was the quality of evidence we had. We had something from Tim Rice, who's a person who puts on shows in this country, and a few other titled in terms of well-known in their industry individuals. So I think it rather depends on the sector and the type of work they have done in the past and what they would like to do in the future.
Mm-hmm. No, that's awesome. That's really great. And I guess it doesn't matter too much, but one thing I want to touch on was just like getting emergency visas. And obviously tier 1, that might be too applicable, but let's say that you had a movie that, because I've had this so many times where they're like, hey, we need you here within like 48 hours or 1 week at the latest. Like, are there ways to expedite things, like let's say for a tier 1 beyond that?
Not for a tier 1, no, but when you say, hey, we want you here in 48 hours.
But specifically for an office or somewhere like that rather than on set, so it might fall into the creative arts genre specifically. So let's say for a video game or visual effects, things like that.
You've got, in that scenario, you've got someone inviting the individual to come here. Mm-hmm. So, for example, that's going to be a film company in the UK or a video production company in the UK. So that person typically could offer them PPE, permitted paid engagement. Mm-hmm. And that is, you can walk in with the right evidence. So you don't have to apply for a visa, provided you're coming for up to a month. If you're
a UK employer, though?
Sent by your US employer or film production company, mm-hmm. that person can just walk in and they will get up to 6 months. But it's all about evidence.
Right.
If you haven't got the evidence, it's a very long journey home.
That's good advice. And so even with a UK employer, that applies too. As long as you got the right evidence, you can. Yeah. Okay, that's really cool. And in regards to, actually, before you end that, I'll say like, I know at one point there were certain relationships set up where you get like a tourist visa to work. If you're under, I think it was like 32, you could get like a 2-year work permit pretty easily for certain Commonwealth countries. Is that still the case?
Yeah. That's still applicable. It's called the Youth Mobility Visa, and the only nationalities, well, not the only nationalities, but there's a list again of Youth Mobility Visa nationals. Canada, Australia, I think it's Japan, and one other are currently on the list, and you get 2 years unlimited permission to work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's why, again, I'm originally from Australia. I think my accent's faded over the years. But, I mean, that, again, is, I guess, why there's so many Australians in, London, as well as, like, Vancouver and certain other Commonwealth countries, because typically, we get to about 21 and then we shoot off and, work wherever we can and get a bit of life experience, which is cool. But, you see us everywhere usually. So, but that's cool. Like, I think that's really great just to kind of have that option if you are younger to kind of at least get some life experience without needing to specifically build up a huge amount of credentials to be able to qualify. So I think it's really cool.
Yeah.
What typically happens though? Sorry, go ahead.
It's called youth mobility, and New Zealand's on the list too.
Yeah.
Sorry, carry on.
No, that's great. What typically happens if you were denied your visa? So let's say that you're applying for a tier 1 and it gets denied. Like, what is it usually? Just a lot more paperwork, or what usually happens then?
Well, it depends what the reason for the denial is.
That's a good point.
If the reason for the denial is you haven't got enough evidence, or we do not think you're exceptional, you are a man or woman of exceptional talent or exceptional promise, then my first bit of advice would be, let's look at the evidence you've submitted and let's see whether we can make representations about it or make a fresh application when you've got better evidence. Mm-hmm. The Arts Council England are very helpful in identifying what's wrong with the application. You can write to them and say, you didn't have enough evidence from X. The reference from Y could have been more robust. So it's about looking at what evidence you provided and looking to identify whether there's any improvement that could be made on it.
Cool. No, that's really great. And same thing, like you kind of touched on this before, but like if you were to lose your job, something like that, what happens to your status then? You mentioned before, at least with the tier 5, that typically the employer would try to compensate for up to 1 month, or does that apply with most employment? But like in terms of the actual visa, like how long would you have to stay in the country before you would have to leave or seek new sponsorship?
Well, it depends category by category.
So
if you come in as a visitor, well, tier 1 is a visa valid for 5 years.
Right.
And if you lose your job, I would say look for another one. If you're looking for tier 2 or tier 5, if you come in and you actually take up the work, then you carry on working. If the work stops, then the next best thing to do is to not leave the UK, because if you leave the UK, the permission you've got lapses, and you wouldn't get back in because you no longer have a sponsor. Mm-hmm. The sponsor, the tier 5 or tier 2 sponsor, has a legal obligation to notify UKVI of the fact that the sponsorship has ceased. And if the records of the government, UKVI, are up to date, and they usually are, when the person travels and then comes back in on the visa that they have or the mm-hmm. certificate of sponsorship they have, they won't be let back in. The tier 1, make sure there's no misapprehension here, a tier 1 doesn't rely on having an employer. Once you get a tier 1 visa, exceptional talent, exceptional promise, you are free to apply your skills in the United Kingdom until the end of the 5-year period.
Cool. Yeah, you're right. So basically with the other ones though, like, so that's good advice for those that are more employment specific. So that's good to know. And in regards to spouse visas, same thing. Like if you were to come in with a family or with a partner, typically are you able to get them a work permit as well, or are they not allowed to work?
Well, if you're coming in as a visitor, in reality, nobody can work mm-hmm. other than the person who's admitted as a visitor. The spouse and dependent children can come in and basically hang out. If you're coming in as the spouse and dependent children of a tier 5 or a tier 2 person, you can work. But if you want to work, you've got to have a visa to do it.
Yep. So is there any spouse visa or something similar for?
There is.
Yeah.
Indeed. There's a spouse visa. Yeah.
Great. Okay, cool.
Again, with tier 1, you get a spouse visa.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. And I guess right now with the BritX or British exit, like how does that affecting, I guess it's really just affecting Europe, but like right now, how is that affecting immigration for a lot of surrounding countries when they want to come in, opposed to how it was, let's say, a year or two ago?
Well, we haven't left Europe yet. We've been posturing about when we're going to leave, whether we need to pass independent legislation as to whether we're going to leave at all. And there's going the Act of Parliament is being the bill, which will become an Act of Parliament, is being debated at the moment. So at the moment, anyone who's an EU national has the right to be employed, self-employed, be a student, or be so-called economically inactive. And that will carry on for about another 2 years. Mm-hmm. Those people who are already here could apply for something called a residence document, or alternatively could apply for permanent residence if they've been here for 5 years. So again, it's looking at the facts and identifying what the facts add up to.
Right. And a couple of other quick questions I'll just go over, but in terms of taxes, how does that usually play out? Let's say if you're either temporarily coming in or long-term, usually what would you expect to pay? Let's say if you're still a resident of another country.
Well, I'm not a tax lawyer, but I know that if you are resident here, and it's over 90 days could make you resident here, having a connection with a house, a home, a job, that could make you taxable as resident. There is an entertainment-specific withholding tax, which the film producers must take off as they pay you money. I'm afraid I don't know the rates of that tax because it's not my area, I'm afraid.
Yep.
I'm an immigration lawyer.
No, I figured I'd ask, but yeah, I mean, it's a whole other genre of questions there. So yeah, I think this is really great. Like in general, I think it definitely gives a lot of insight into both what your options are as well as like the initial steps. And I figure at the same time, like if you want to talk about for a little bit, what are some of the benefits of actually hiring an immigration firm rather than doing it all yourself? Because obviously for me, every time I've ever had to deal with visas, I've always had someone else helping. I don't want to do it myself because it's such a critical thing that you want to get it done right. You know what I mean? So the services you guys provide and also the benefits, like what would you say are some of the key ones that help people, with their cases?
Well, the key benefit is getting it right.
Mm-hmm.
So could spend a very small amount of money getting it right. So you can give diagnostic advice about, do you need any permit at all, or can you come in as a visitor?
Mm-hmm.
Alternatively, you could recast the individual's aspirations and quality of evidence to make sure it fits one of the immigration categories. So, I've spent the whole of my life doing immigration law, and if you get it right, then you get what you want. If you get it wrong, you could end up back on the same plane.
Yeah, and if it's a long flight, you don't want to do that. Cool. No, this has been really great. I appreciate you taking the time to touch base on all these subjects. And if anyone was interested in reaching out to you guys to possibly get help with applying for work permits, that sort of thing, would you suggest talking to you or someone else at your firm?
Well, I think talk to me to begin with, and then if I'm not the right person or funds are an issue, then I would pass it on to another colleague. I mean, there are other categories which are non-entertainment specific. For example, if you were married to a Brit or an EU national, then there'd be another type of visa you could obtain.
Mm-hmm.
If you're married to someone or living with someone for 2 years or more, then you could well get what is called a permanent residence visa by virtue of the relationship. So we've been having a very general conversation. If we can become fact specific, and that would be usually in the form of sending information to me, and then I could identify which route to go down, then it may well be that the individual could get a visa based on marriage. I do not know, but mm-hmm. We just need to have a look at the facts.
Cool. And I guess the final question would be, typically, what would be the first things that you would request from them in terms of facts and other information once they reach out to you?
I need to know what their personal script was. Sorry to use your industry's terms, but ideally, I would like the person to set out in writing who they were, what they wanted to do. Do they have a US employer or a UK employer? I use the word employer advisedly, and how long they want to stay for. And once we've got that information, we could say, okay, that is or is not enough information. Please send me X, and so that I can tell you approximately what it's going to cost you.
Okay, I hope you enjoyed that episode, and I want to thank Philip for taking the time to do this episode with me, and I hope that you got a lot of insight into what it would take to work in the United Kingdom and also have a pretty good step-by-step plan of what you want to do next. If you have any questions, feel free to email me. You can go to the show notes where you'll be able to find out all this information and more. Simply go to www.alanmckay.com/109 and you'll be able to find links to my email to email me comments if you want to leave a comment there. In addition to that, you can sign up for the Best Year Yet Bootcamp, which is the intense course that a lot of these episodes are all linked around. And there'll also be a link to the free training that is available for all of December. So the Best Year Yet will always be available. However, the visual effects training will only be available for December. Finally, there's also a link to a new book that we've written, The Productive Artist, which is a productivity guide specifically for us in the visual effects or design or game development industries, really about how to be more productive as creatives. So I hope that is another one of those many, many resources that will really allow you to benefit a lot from going through it. So that being said, next episode will be out in a couple of days. It's very hard to keep track of what's going on with what, because next week I'm going to be interviewing Ina Rodiger, who was speaking at the IA Mag Masterclass in Europe last year. It was really cool, and we're doing a really cool episode on her background as an animator working at Sony and all these other places. And so many other cool episodes coming up. So let me know what you think about the boot camps. I'm hoping you're enjoying the stuff. That's all I'll say for now. Check out the training, check out the productivity guide, check out the boot camp. It's going to be 10 videos, 3 tutorials, loads of other stuff, an entire book guide written specifically on it, so you can follow it through with that. You can read it on your iPad, on the bus, whatever. I fully believe in total immersion when it comes to learning anything, so that's why I want to hit you with podcast episodes, videos, actual video tutorials that show you step by step how to do a lot of these exercises, as well as having a written book to go with it too. So this is really cool and experimental. I hope you enjoy it. Like I said, check out the show notes, alanmckay.com/109. That's it for now. Rock on.